evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points. We've got plenty ahead on the show. Lots that's happening, major developments that are taking place. We'll track each and every one of them. But first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. The founder of a news website, NewsClick, Probir Purkayast, and Human Resources head Amit Chakravarti arrested after the Delhi Police Special Cell raids over 100 locations over alleged Chinese funding. Several journalists are detained before being let off. Their laptops and phones are seized. Opposition India bloc labels the raids on news website NewsClick as BJP's fresh attack on press freedom, condemns coercive actions. Union Minister Anurag Thakur claims law is taking its course, agencies free to carry out investigations. Prime Minister Modi adds a new twist to the Telangana election battle, says he rejected Chief Minister KCR's request to join the NDA. The BRS refutes it, claims an alliance with Modi is impossible. A day after the Bihar government comes up with a caste census, the issue becomes a political hot potato. Mr. Modi says the BJP knows only one caste and that's the poor, insists the Congress is trying to divide Hindus, decrease minority rights. 31 deaths, including 15 infants, are dead in just 36 hours in Maharashtra's Nanded hospital. Shortage of medicines at the hospital blamed for deaths. The government orders an inquiry. India-Canada diplomatic war continues to snowball. Reports claim India asked Canada to repatriate 40 diplomats by October 10th or their diplomatic immunity will be removed. It's Trinamool Congress versus the BJP over central scheme funds. TMC MP Abhishek Banerjee leads a Jantar Mantar protest over alleged withholding of funds. BJP counters claim CBI must probe TMC corruption in central schemes. Fresh revelations emerge after a Delhi terror module bust. Police claims Mumbai's Chabad House, Ayodhya Temple were made terror targets. Nabbed ISIS terrorist Shah Nawaz had led terror training camps, insists the NIA. India's gold medal tally jumps to 15 as Parul Chaudhary and Anu Rani win gold medals on day 10 of the ongoing Asian Games. India has now won 69 medals at the Games. But the news that's breaking at this moment, after day-long raids, detentions and seizures of mobile phones and laptops, the founder of a news website, NewsClick, Probir Purkayast of the Delhi Science Forum, has been arrested. NewsClick's Amit Chakravarti also arrested. This comes on a day when the Delhi Police's special cell quizzed 46 people, including several journalists. The accusation being that NewsClick, a news website, has been funded by the Chinese government or Chinese citizens and has been carrying out propaganda. FIRs had earlier been filed under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, and the funding of the organization is under investigation. The Delhi police has seized digital devices. The issue has snowballed into a major controversy now. That's right. This is our top story tonight. The special cell of the Delhi police today raided journalists, activists, contributors and staff of a news website, NewsClick, accusing them of being funded by Chinese agencies. The journalists were picked up early this morning. Their mobile phones and laptops were also seized, and many of them, including several prominent journalists, were taken to the special cell of the Delhi police. The opposition stepped in and called it an attack on the freedom of the press because NewsClick has been critical of the Narendra Modi government on several issues. The government claims that the due process of law is being followed. We'll have a debate in a moment and we'll be joined by one of India's top journalists. But first, the big story. Is this another attack on the freedom of the press, or is the Modi government justified in claiming that there is a China hand in websites critical of this government? It's our top story.
Raids at over 100 locations in the National Capital Region. The special cell of the Delhi police swooped down on offices and homes of several journalists, staff and other individuals associated with the NewsClick. A case was filed on the 17th of August under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Raids based on inputs by the Enforcement Directorate shared with the Delhi Police Special Cell. The NewsClick portal accused of receiving funds from China for anti-India propaganda. Some journalists linked to NewsClick were brought to the Special Cell office and questioned regarding the Shaheen Bagh farmer protest and protests in the northeast. They were also questioned about their foreign travel and funding.
They asked me various questions. I came with them voluntarily to this place, the special cell. What has happened is in the public domain. Time will tell.
देखिए, मुझे जस्टिफाई करने की जरूरत नहीं है। अगर किसी ने गलत किया है तो उसके ऊपर जांच एजेंसियां काम करती हैं। जांच एजेंसियां स्वतंत्र हैं, वो अपनी कार्रवाई नियमों को देखकर करती हैं।
Police seized several electronic devices including laptops and mobile phones and took data dumps of hard disks from the raided properties. An investigation by the Enforcement Directorate revealed an alleged fraudulent infusion of foreign funds to a tune of 38.05 crore rupees during a short span of 3 years.
Basically, Communist Party of China, the person who was involved in this entire deal is Newell Roy Singham. He has 4 non-profits in USA and he is a tech billionaire living in Shanghai. Through Singham, 38 crore rupees traveled to NewsClick. Out of these 38 crore rupees, this becomes extremely important. Out of 38 crore rupees, 9 crore came through foreign direct investment via inward remittances. Apart from 9 crore rupees, almost 28 crore rupees also traveled, and according to NewsClick, it was in exchange of some of the services which they provided. But when Enforcement Directorate raided their premises, when they got hold of certain documents in this entire investigation, what they got to know, there was no logical explanation of that 38 crore rupees. Out of 38 crore rupees, again, extremely important, 21 lakh rupees went to Gautam Navlakha. He is also a shareholder, and along with Gautam Navlakha, there were certain individuals, certain journalists who also got that money.
The Congress rallied around these journalists who have been raided as part of the NewsClick investigation. The Congress party accused the government of cracking down on free press. The Editors Guild of India expressed its deep concern over these raids. It urged the government not to use the draconian criminal laws as tools for press intimidation. NewsClick, on its part, had earlier said it would respond to allegations in courts of law. With Munish Pandey in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now is one of the country's senior-most, most eminent journalists. I'm joined by N. Ram, the director at the Hindu Group of Publishing and also, of course, the former editor-in-chief of the Hindu newspaper. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Ram. How do you see the events that have taken place today? Raids being carried out across 100 locations, several journalists being detained, accusations being made that the NewsClick web portal is linked to Chinese funding. How do you see this? Do you see this as an attack on the freedom of the press, or as the government claims that they are trying to defend sovereignty against those who are anti-India?
This is an outrageous attack, a military-style swoop on freedom of the press. Of course, NewsClick has been targeted, and there's been a McCarthyite campaign, largely based on lies, triggered perhaps by the New York Times piece that appeared some time ago. And it's important to note that nowhere, while the New York Times piece has a particular ideological slant, nowhere does it accuse NewsClick of any wrongdoing by the law, anything illegal. There are two references there, two lazy references, and this I think has given fresh life to the vendetta that we saw before from 2021 against NewsClick, a small but focused digital venture which which I think acquitted itself very well during the farmers' protest, and it has taken up issues that it's uh, a progressive offering. It's a not-profit. It's not a not-profit, but profit is not its motivation. This is sum and substance of what NewsClick is, and they have targeted it, perhaps to send a message, a wider message. Of course, to still this voice, but also to send a message to the press. And this is really an attack on freedom of the press. And this, we have seen many lows before.
You're calling it an attack on the freedom of the press. The government, the government, I might add, Mr. Ram, albeit without an official statement here, but based on sources, is claiming that the investigation carried out over the last few years by the Enforcement Directorate, which had put in charges against Prevention of Money Laundering Act, claims that directors at NewsClick like Prabir Purkayasth had received money from Neville Roy Singham, who they claim is a US citizen but reportedly affiliated to the Communist Party of China, and was therefore being used to carry anti-Modi pro-China pieces. How do you see this? Do you believe that this is all a red herring, this Chinese, this endless search for an enemy figure? Do you believe that the Modi government is guilty of that? Or do you believe that this is exactly how governments operate, not just in the center, but in states, that anyone who has a dissenting voice has to be stilled using the force of the law? In this case, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, anti-terror law, is reportedly being used.
Yes, I think this is what I mean by a McCarthyite campaign, full of lies, because nowhere does in fact, no Chinese money is mentioned at all in the New York Times piece. I have it here. It's called A Global Web of Chinese Propaganda Leads to a US Tech Mogul, published on August 5th this year, updated on August 10th. Nowhere does it say that. And there are two references. I've taken them out. One is the authorities in India raided a news organization tied to Mr. Singham during a crackdown on the press. Not that, crackdown on the press, accusing it of having ties to the Chinese government, but offering no proof. Secondly, the second reference in the story is, quote, the Times in New Delhi, corporate filings show Mr. Singham's network financed a news site, NewsClick, that sprinkled its coverage with Chinese government talking points. There's no substantiation of that assertion that it sprinkles its coverage with Chinese government talking points. And even if it did, for argument's sake, that is not illegal. You may agree with a particular talking point of this or that country, including China. So that's not an offense under the law, and certainly nothing to do with terrorism. And then it says, it refers to one video.
So that's an important point you're making. You're saying, you're making an important point. You're saying even if, let's assume that NewsClick was putting out a commentary that may be similar to what possibly China was doing, that is not a crime, A. Am I clear? That for you is that to then accuse them, B, for as sort of terrorists is even worse. So your argument is that if at all tomorrow a journalist organization has to be raided, journalists detained, you have to come up with much more solid facts, not innuendo, not hearsay, not throwing mud and hoping some of it will stick. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we mean. And this is not going to stick in any court of law if there is to be justice, because there's no connection between what we know about the matters alleged, matters referred to, and the charges. There's nothing there. There's no Chinese money that has come in. I know Roy Singham, Neville Roy Singham. A lot of people know him. I've known him very well. He founded ThoughtWorks. And as the New York Times piece article says, he sold it for apparently $780 million, and put a huge part of it into non-profits, American non-profits, where you don't have to disclose some details. And he's not registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act because he doesn't receive money from anyone else, is what he has made clear. And he doesn't act at the direction of anyone. If he chooses, he's based in Shanghai, Roy, and if he chooses to cooperate with Chinese organizations, that's his business. And the American law, the Constitution, that's, he's completely clear on that.
But there will be those. But let me for a moment, let me for a moment play devil's advocate for those who will say that all of this is very dangerous to national interest. That allowing someone like Level Roy Singham to perhaps influence editorial policies, albeit of a very small website, is dangerous. This should not be allowed. This would, therefore, the government is cracking down. This is not about freedom of the press. This is about national security and sovereignty.
Yeah, this is used by many autocratic governments all over the world to say that national security is threatened, or is this these are the two things: terrorism and national security. And even in Western countries, there have been concerns about the state of free speech and protection. Of course, in the U.S., there's very strong constitutional backing for in the First Amendment, freedom of speech and expression. You can say many things which many people would consider outrageous, and yet you're fine. Our law may be different, but there is nothing in the law that says that any of this activity comes under danger to national interests or terrorism and so on. So what they have said is there is one video. They've only pointed to one video, which I looked at it. It's 70 years of the Chinese Revolution, it's eulogized in that video. They've hosted it. Other than that, no substantiation of that. And then, as I said, even if they did, even supposing they agreed with China's policy on climate change, which I think is pretty close to what India's policy has been in the past, that's nothing to do. The law can't be brought in on that. You may disagree with it. The government may not be happy with it, but that's all you can do. This is and the manner.
Can I therefore ask you in conclusion? Can I ask you in conclusion what would be your one piece of advice to the Modi government and to journalist organizations? How should they respond to what you've seen happen in the last 24 hours, both the Modi government and journalist organizations?
Journalist organizations should express solidarity, total solidarity with NewsClick and all the journalists who I think maybe 50 people is what I've read in the reports. They should come all out, set their differences with NewsClick or views espoused by this or that journalist aside, and unite on this question, which I think is what they're going to do. I hope the Editors Guild of India, you used to be the president, comes out clearly. It has come out in the past also clearly on this. And the Press Club of India in Delhi has also come out. I don't have much hope from the Press Council of India these days. So they should come out strongly, protest, express their solidarity in various ways, lawful ways. As for the Modi government, it's best to learn lessons from it, because they're getting a very bad name all over the world because of this. Wherever freedom is valued, freedom of the press, they're getting a very bad name. India's reputation, that's what national interest requires. The national interest requires, going back on this, reversing track and withdrawing all this so that the damage is limited for itself. Because this is not going to suppress...
If the government, Mr. Ram, says that we are following due process of law, please hold your horses till the investigation is complete. What would you say?
There are many illegal things that the special cell, the Delhi Police Special Cell, is reported to have done, taken away devices without giving receipts or copies to them. Often they don't return them for a year or two or many, many months. This is complete lawlessness. You snatch somebody's devices, their personal details. You just go to their homes, not the offices, even junior staff. This is completely lawless. And you wonder sometimes, what is the purpose of this? Because does it make any sense It's completely over the top what they're doing. Is it to send some message to others? That's the question that's got to be raised.
Right.
So it's a lawless process, and this should be challenged also in courts. And if I think
Right.
if this is to have any meaning, this aspect will also have to be looked at, the procedure resorted to in this case. That has to be challenged using the best legal minds in the country.
Right.
I would appeal to lawyers to come forward. The best, I know Mr. Fali Nariman and others have spoken on the state of freedom, and many others as well, so Dushyant Dave and so on. I think the lawyers should come out and support the media and particularly the journalists concerned, offer their services pro bono. Many of them do. I know many of them do, Prashant Bhushan and others. And so I think we expect this from the community that represents the law.
Right. Let me leave it there. N. Ram, you've spoken very strongly and very clearly, and I hope there are people out there listening that the worst thing you can do for a nation's image globally is to be seen to be cracking down on the media. Then the very concept of democracy as we know it comes under threat. Thank you very much, N. Ram, for speaking your mind.
Thank you, Rajdeep.
So let's raise the big questions tonight. Is the Modi government now targeting all dissenting voices? Does the government's Chinese-funded propaganda argument really work in the NewsClick case? Are the raids meant to distract from the caste census findings as the opposition is alleging? Is the government really following due process when raiding media houses? Joining me now are Shehzad Poonawalla, BJP spokesperson, Fuad Halim, leader CPIM, and Rohan Gupta, Congress's spokesperson. Tanveer Ahmed Mir, senior lawyer, has dealt with a number of criminal cases. Appreciate all of you joining us. Shehzad Poonawalla, to you first. N. Ram was on my show a short while ago and he said what has happened is an attack on the freedom of the press. It shows that we have an authoritarian government at times which is lawless in the way it functions. How do you respond to those very strong words coming from someone as senior as N. Ram?
Personally, I have a lot of regard for Mr. N. Ram, even though once Hindu, under his leadership, published a cropped article and a cropped document of the Ministry of Defence and tried to give it another spin in the Rafale case in 2019, but I don't want to judge him on that. But he made 2 or 3 assertions. First of all, Rajdeep, and I hope you won't interrupt me, the New York Times article, which basically said that Mr. Neville Roy Singham is a front of the Chinese deep state and he's pumping in money into organizations including NewsClick, happened in August 2023. This investigation and inquiry and proceedings have been on from 2021. Mr. Neville Roy Singham and NewsClick have gone against the ED and EOW to a court of law. Initially, the court of law had even granted them protection only from coercive action, not even dismiss the case or remove the case in any way. It allowed the proceedings to continue, and even that protection, which was given on an interim basis, has now in a sense come under question because the same court has now issued notices to Praveen Purkayastha saying why should that interim protection not be vacated. This issue is not a press freedom issue. This issue is fundamentally, one, receiving money through dubious sources, and about 38 crores have been pumped into this group. It has come in, 9 crores have come in through FDI at a very high share price of 11,500 rupees for a company which was making losses in 2018. Immediately it gets so much money. The second angle the money came in from was a violation of PMLA, was the fact that 28 crores was paid for export of services. One of the services provided by this group, by the way, is electricity services provided by a 9th standard electrician who was paid 1.5 crore rupees. So these kinds of things have been done. So clearly the ED and the EOW had a liquor standard to come into this investigation. In the process, they have found that this goes certain places deeper, which is that it is also against the nation's sovereignty, it is also against the nation's interest, and there are a lot of evidences. There are email exchanges to identify as to how
no, 1 minute. I didn't
was
interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you. Mr. Poonawalla, I did not interrupt you until this point. My question is, how is it against the nation? How is this PMLA case, which has in a sense been going on for 2 years with little headway seemingly made? In the last 2 years, in this PMLA case, there hasn't been any arrest made. The evidence, by all accounts, which the Delhi High Court looked at, was not enough to ensure coercive action. Now you have these high-profile raids, and you're telling me it's against national sovereignty. Where is it against national sovereignty? Can you be more specific how it's against national sovereignty, Mr. Poonawalla?
Absolutely. First of all, Rajdeep, the NewsClick organization had gone there to get the proceedings quashed. All they got was a protection from coercive action. Clearly, this was not a clean sheet given to them by the court, and that too is in question because a notice has been issued that why it should not be vacated. Therefore, the question of your specific question, why arrests were not made, because of this interim protection that was granted to them. Point number two, where does this go from being a PMLA offense to an offense under UAPA? Now look, that obviously the interrogations is on and the Delhi police will come out with a more categorical answer on that. But having said that, there are 3 or 4 points that I can immediately point out to you. Here there are email exchanges, and one of the email exchanges between Neville Roy Singham and Praveen Purkayastha openly talk about undermining India's positions and in sovereignty, whether it is on the border dispute, it talks about on the COVID management, it talks about spreading misinformation about India's position on many other subjects, and including issues like Rafale, on which they spread a large number of fake articles which were never given a corrigendum for, and the Supreme Court and other agencies have come out with the categorical finding on Rafale and other issues. Having said that, my limited
Those
point
are not
is that
UAPA
today when the
offenses.
investigations have
Those
started,
are not
why is the
UAPA
Congress-
offenses. For God's sake, Mr. Poonawalla, read the
Says-
UAPA Act. Those are not UAPA offenses. Those are not UAPA offenses. You are putting in a law, an anti-terror law,
Rajdeep.
including detaining junior employees like a graphic designer. What is a graphic designer, a junior employee, got to do with an anti-terror law? Where does
Rajdeep.
this fit in within UAPA, for God's sake?
Rajdeep, let me answer that categorically once again, because perhaps undermining India's sovereignty is not an offense under UAPA for you, but that's, having said that, let me give you a more specific example. Much of the money that was funneled through this
How is it if I write an article questioning the Indian government's policy on COVID or on border management, how does it become, how is writing an article or a video undermining sovereignty? Very quickly, please do explain.
Rajdeep, first of all, Gautam Navlakha, who continues, and now Gautam Navlakha has also not got relief. He's booked under UAPA. He's only been now put under house arrest. He has not been released by any court of law. Was one of the beneficiaries of the money that was funneled in through Neville Roy Singham and his agency into NewsClick. Can you please explain that relation? Should that not be investigated? Gautam Navlakha is continuing to be held in jail or in house arrest, at least now, under UAPA charges. So there is a direct link even with somebody who's accused of UAPA offenses, point number one. Point number two, please listen to me very carefully. There are 2 angles to this. The Delhi police has now not arrested, nor has it detained or done anything against anybody's personal liberty. It has called people for questioning, those people you are mentioning about. They are being questioned that how have you got these proceeds? Please explain, come and give an explanation. After that, the Delhi police will come out with a more categorical finding as to why they have invoked UAPA. That is their job. But having said that, I have 2 questions. Just 2 questions, let me articulate them. One, if this is about press freedom, Rajdeep, and I take that for 10 seconds, the Congress party recently banned 14 journalists, including many of your colleagues. The Congress party is the one which put people like Kamal Shukla for putting out a Facebook post into charges of sedition. It put Mr. Nilesh Sharma into jail for months in Chhattisgarh. You have the situation in TMC-run government, put Mr. Bagchi in jail for reporting on Hooch. He's from ABP. You have a situation where Kerala has stopped or has booked people, including people from Asianet and Mathrubhumi, for doing their job. This is for them to champion the cause of press freedom is like the Satan preaching scriptures, point number one. Point number two, the Congress party, why is it always siding with those who have been with the Chinese propaganda? The digital emails and the transaction, the exchanges show, one email shows, and let me read out that, between Mr. Karat and Mr. Neville Roy Singham, where Mr. Karat says in 2021 that I thank you for the Guancha piece. It is a very revealing piece in this time where an anti-China sentiment has been hyped up by the media. Were you hyping up an anti-China sentiment, or was it in the aftermath of Galwan that there was a sense of anger against China.
Can I?
If Prabir Purkayastha asked Neville Roy Singham in another email that give me data of China to show that China is doing very well at managing COVID, but India and US have failed. Is this as per your editorial integrity? Do you take orders from somebody who pays you? Rajdeep, let's even ask this on the question of journalism and journalistic ethics. Do you take money to peddle a particular point of view?
I have been very generous in listening to you. The others must now respond.
That's right.
Yeah, let the others respond. You know, Rohan Gupta, we've also had the arrest. We've had the arrest now of Prabir Purkayastha and another member of the board of NewsClick. The organization's offices have been sealed. According to Shehzad Poonawalla, who is the Congress to come up and say this is a freedom of press issue? The Congress has put out a list of journalists who they have decided to boycott in Congress-ruled states, whether it's in Chhattisgarh, for example, when journalists have made critical comments about the government, they've been acted against, FIRs have been filed. This sense of intolerance of any dissenting voice is not just limited to the Modi government at the center. Your response?
See, Rajdeep, when you were asking questions to BJP spokesperson, he was all over the place. And the gist of the total discussion is national sovereignty is BJP. Anything against BJP is against national sovereignty. This is the definition of BJP. Why? This is not Sahyog, this is Prayog of BJP, that out of 5,422 cases which are registered in PMLA, not even a single case against BJP leader. Why it is against opposition leaders? Why it is against the media which is speaking against BJP? Why it is always against the dissenting voice against this government? And see, there is no tolerance, Rajdeep, as far as BJP is concerned. If the press speaks about the reality of the country, about the failure of BJP, is it against national sovereignty? Is it Desdro? It is the Rashtradro. What is this?
But when you decide to put out boycott lists officially of journalists, or when your government in Chhattisgarh is also accused of targeting journalists, putting cases against them, how are you different to the BJP? My worry is this intolerance is growing across parties in this country.
See, if you see the people whom we have boycotted, see their agenda. We have the evidence in front of you. You take 500 debates of those people. Where are the issues of people discussed? They come with the specific agenda. So we don't want to be part of it. That's it. We have our right to ensure that we don't become part of agenda which is not helping country. We are in opposition party. We have right to ask questions against BJP government on the failure issues.
Okay, so that's the boycott list. What about the journalists who've been prosecuted in Chhattisgarh because they've done critical? You have journalists in Chhattisgarh because they've done critical stories against your government there. They've been acted against.
No, absolutely not, Rajdeep. Whenever Congress party does
or
something,
indeed the Shiv Sena government, the Shiv Sena Congress government picked up Arnab Goswami. I may disagree with Mr. Goswami's journalism, but that doesn't mean that you pick him up early in the morning.
No, absolutely not. It is not because of his journalism. There are the evidences what he has done. You see what level he has gone in terms of reporting. Whatever the cases he was reporting, we know the reality after 1 year. What is the fact of the matter? See, Rajdeep, we cannot allow people just to run their agenda. Whatever is right is right. If there is mistake by Congress party, you can question. We have never questioned journalists just because of questioning Congress government. I am giving you example of the people whom we have boycotted. I will show you at least 100 debates of those people. You tell me one debate where they have raised issues against this government. You show me one debate where they
have arrested journalists. You have arrested journalists when your government was in Maharashtra, when your government was... Look, you have also... I am not going to engage in whataboutery. My worry is who takes the moral high ground. Let me come to Fawad Halim for a moment, the CPM leader, because Fawad Halim, the left is at the center of it. It is said that NewsClick is close to the Communist Party of China through Neville Roy Singham, that there are leaders of the left who are also close to some of these forces. There was one of the raids took place at an employee who was an associate of Sitaram Yechuri, or who was the father of a Sitaram Yechuri's associate. So there's a left connection. How do you respond to the fact that according to the BJP or according to the Delhi police sources, this is a Chinese funded outlet and therefore we've cracked down on it?
Well, one has to be very clear that NewsClick has been at the receiving end of the present government. In 2021, we've seen a number of agencies go against NewsClick and they ended up with nothing in their hands. So this entire process, one has to understand, is a sort of what you call war that the Modi government would like to declare on all the voices that are going to be very, very critical of the Modi government pre-2024. You see, the pitch is wet for Narendra Modi for 2024 and he is scared. Now, what is this entire what you call exercise resulted in? If you notice, the police 500 personnel that are fanned out all over the places enter the journalist's house. They have confiscated mobile phones and laptops. Now, these mobile phones and laptops, which are a vital source of information as to how journalists, build up their contacts and gather information. That is going to remain in the state custody and Narendra Modi's custody for a long period of time, and that information is vital. Now, coming as to on the part of the allegation, one has to keep in mind that the court has very categorically on the 21st of July, if I remember correctly, 21st of June, gave protection to NewsClick. The issue was raised again on the 12th of August, at which the ED had requested that they would like to proceed with the investigation. The court had listed the matter. The matter is listed for hearing, and that hearing should go through its due process of the court of law. Why are the state agencies actually trying to preempt the judicial process in this context?
So, but that's exactly
simple
exactly what's happened. We've had these arrests now. We've had these arrests. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So these arrests are going to create an atmosphere where people who are going to be raising their voices are going to be intimidated, and that's the very intention of this government. As far as the substance of the matter is concerned, I don't think so. The substance of the matter is going
Mr. Hakim, just a minute. Mr. Hakim, the Delhi police says, for example, just a minute. The Delhi police says a payment this is not as yet as official statement, but our sources have told us a payment of rupees 50 lakhs was made to a shareholder in NewsClick who is also a member of IT cell of CPM, manages Twitter handles of various leaders of the party. Now, I presume that your party has no problem with being associated with NewsClick, am I right? Just as, let's say, tomorrow the organizer is seen as a mouthpiece of the BJP RSS. Do you have a problem if tomorrow you are seen as if NewsClick is seen as a mouthpiece of the Communist Party, and is that a crime? I don't think it's a crime, but are you open to the idea of accepting that?
Well, one has to be very clear. The Communist Party and its members are always the target of the state and the state agencies and the party that rules and takes over in charge of the state. So that is historical legacy. You go back to Germany, you see the first thing that Hitler did was burn the books that the communists had. So, that continues. Whatever communists and the lefts have to stay, using the prevailing media that is existing, the state and the ruling party has an issue with it, and they will definitely go against the communists, and that's part of our historical tradition. It is nothing new that Narendra Modi and his supporters are throwing at us. The question over here is, are they following the law of the land? That is the question.
Rajdeep, before that, small intervention, please. Small intervention.
Okay, are you following the law of the land? Can I just bring in, just a minute, Mr. Poonawalla. I want to bring in a lawyer. Tanveer Ahmed Mir is a senior lawyer and deserves to know. Tanveer Ahmed Mir, look at the sequence of events. A PMLA case is filed against NewsClick. For the last 2 years, investigation is carried out. Now we are told the charges have been changed to UAPA. Journalists and even consultants and junior employees associated are detained. Their laptops are seized, mobile phones are seized. Do you believe due process has been followed in this case, or is it being short-circuited and subverted?
Well, Rajdeep, thank you for inviting me to your program. What I understand is that the Delhi Police Special Cell, cannot conduct a raid without first registering an FIR. And if that FIR is registered under the draconian provisions of UAPA 1967, then you have to first satisfy yourself whether the information which has been gathered in the pre-FIR inquiry by the means of sharing of information internationally, domestically, or from other law enforcement agencies, whether the conduct of anybody at NewsClick individually or collectively as a company or an association would come within the definition of unlawful activity as defined under Section 2O of the UAPA Act 1967 as amended up to date. There are only three ingredients there. If any act of any individual or association is geared towards secession of any territory from the Indian Union. Second is, if any association or individual acts against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country, or does anything which is, promoting disaffection against the government or towards the state. Now, in terms of that, if any one of these activities so alleged fundamentally would come within the meaning of unlawful activity, only then the further provisions can come into play. My understanding is that if you look at 2022 bilateral trade between India and China, it is about 125 US billion dollars. Out of that, the Chinese companies or Chinese exports to India are at $118.5 billion. Now, the policy of the government of India is not to declare the People's Republic of China as a country which is inimical to the Indian Union. Otherwise, we would not be doing trade. That's only towards Pakistan. Now, if certain people are even receiving funding directly or indirectly from any person abroad, like Mr. Singham or his organizations, then primarily the UAPA cannot come into play. What can come into play is whether the provisions of 32, 35, and 37 of FCRA Act 2010 as amended up to date have been violated, which means that a recipient agency for foreign funds has to have an FCRA clearance to receive foreign funds for any kind of organizational activity or even for a trade or otherwise. So the special cell Delhi police going on and registering offenses under UAPA, which can be, Section 13 as punishment for commission of an unlawful activity, or further draconian in Chapter 4, which is a terrorist act. I don't think that from whatever I have heard, I don't have an FIR in front of me to peruse, but receipt of Chinese funds per se would not, or Chinese promoters' funds, as Mr. Poonawala said that...
Let me stop you there. You've been very clear and explicit about that. I want to give Mr. Poonawala therefore the final word on that. You've heard this, Mr. Poonawala. Receipt of foreign funds. Yeah. If there is a violation, you can go under FCRA. To bring in UAPA is very dangerous and chilling. And as I said, you are doing it even detaining junior employees, detaining their phones, their laptops, and you're creating this sense of intimidation. No one says you don't follow the due process. Please follow it. But when you suddenly convert what seems prima facie a violation under FCRA into UAPA, then it is extremely dangerous, Mr. Poonawala. That is where the threat to the freedom of the press comes.
Rajdeep, please let me answer this, and just 30 seconds without interruption, I request you. Tanveer is absolutely right. Supposing two organizations are trading and supposing some Chinese company has invested through the normal legal routes money into the Indian entity, it is allowed by law. So therefore that can't be seen as terrorism or as perpetuating terrorism until the time we have declared China as an enemy nation. He's absolutely right. But Mr. Tanveer, when instead of the direct route, you use an insidious route and part of your payment goes to a UAPA accused, and the agencies in law have a right to then further investigate, A, which has come in violation of PMLA, B, it has gone to a UAPA accused, and C, you are saying that this is about Modi's image being damaged and therefore it doesn't become a challenge to India's sovereignty. India Today has reported one aspect where a Chinese map which contained Arunachal Pradesh was sent to these people by Neville Roy Singham to be peddled forward. So there is a lot of other national security and territorial integrity things that have taken place in this. The evidence is with the agencies. Let the agencies investigate. Nobody has been detained, Rajdeep. I reiterate, please ask all of those people who have gone, have they been detained or are they being interrogated? Some of them have been left also, as per my
We've already had
Prabir
Purkayastha and another director of NewsClick arrested. We've had the organization sealed.
Now, one second, Rajdeep. You were talking about those 14 odd people. Now you're coming to Prabir Purkayastha. Prabir Purkayastha has already been facing PMLA case and now he has been booked under UAP. This is your information. I have not seen the FIR. I am not going to comment on it. But if that is what you are saying,
so why were the journalists detained?
Why were
Mr. Poonawalla, why were the journalists detained? Why were the journalists who have been critical of government policies being detained this morning and picked up early morning as if they are criminals? What was the need to seize their laptops, seize their phones? Come on.
1 second, Rajdeep.
There were at least a dozen journalists who were brought today, this morning, to the special cell of the Delhi police. I am saying journalists are not above the law. But what is the nature to bring them under UAPI investigation? That's all.
Rajdeep, let me speak. You're speaking over me. Rajdeep, now you have spoken or you want to speak for some more time?
30 seconds. 30 seconds uninterrupted.
Please, I request you.
30 seconds uninterrupted.
Don't interrupt. You have said, in the pursuance of a case, which you are saying is a UAPA case, where the proceeds of the alleged crime money has gone to many people and the investigating agencies are calling them for interrogation, you are saying they are being hounded. So should they not be interrogated also? Secondly, which journalists as per you have been detained? Please give me their name, put out their names who have been detained, specific names. And thirdly, Mr. Fuad Halim, when he comes with this high moral ground, his State Secretary in Kerala, Mr. M. Govindan, when Asianet journalists and Mathrubhumi journalists were arrested, at that time he said, if you report against the government, if you do anti-government activities, we'll put you in jail. They are lecturing us. TMC, which arrests journalists, is lecturing us. Congress, which has a whole history, which you have rightly told the Rohan Gupta, is lecturing us. Today I am saying if any journalist has been wrongfully detained or arrested, he should employ Tanveer and Tanveer ji should immediately go and apply for bail for him in the Supreme Court. What will stop him? The Supreme Court hears them immediately.
I leave it there. I leave it there. This is the one. Mr. Poonawalla, I want to end it here. I've run out of time. I want to say this. I believe political parties have much to answer for when it comes to the manner in which they intimidate journalists. But I think this is one issue on which I would like to believe I can take the high moral ground. Even when Mr. Arnab Goswami, whose journalism I may disagree with several times, was arrested and picked up by the Maharashtra government, the Editors Guild of India and me personally had come out and stood up for him. How many of these others have stood up for their fellow journalists is a question I will ask. We want journalists to show solidarity when due process of law is not followed and they are intimidated. If someone has violated the law, please throw the law book at him. But follow due process. Do not resort to what many believe is a chilling effect when you employ laws, draconian laws like the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Use those laws sparingly and use them with transparency. You cannot have a Siddhi Kappan-like case where a journalist spends more than 2 years in jail without bail and the charges against him are simply unproven. He was going there, remember, to report a case on Hathras. He was associated, they said, with the Popular Front of India, which at the time was not a banned organization. Journalists across India, not just at the center and the states, need to be protected if their rights are violated. Think about it. Let's turn from there to today's shocker. Over 30 people have died in the last 36 hours, many of them infants and children, at a government hospital in Nanded in Maharashtra. The opposition, of course, is targeting the Shinde government, blaming it for poor infrastructure. This is the second such incident of hospital deaths in Maharashtra in the last few months. The Shinde government has ordered an inquiry. It's our Get Real India story.
31 deaths in 36 hours have put the Dr. Shankarrao Chavan Government Medical College Hospital in Nanded under a cloud. Among the victims are 15 children, including newborn babies. Activists are blaming shortage of medicines for the sudden spurt in deaths.
हमने ये देखा है प्रैक्टिकल सेंस में कि जब यहाँ पेशेंट एडमिट होता है तो उनको दवाइयाँ बाहर से लानी पड़ती हैं। स्टाफ को ओपीडी में तो दवाई मिलती ही नहीं है। सरकारी मशीनरी ये सिर्फ नांदेड़ के हद तक नहीं है, सिविल हॉस्पिटल रहे, मेडिकल कॉलेज, गवर्नमेंट मेडिकल कॉलेज के रहे, इनकी बदतरीन हालत है।
India Today conducted a reality check. We found family members of many patients buying medicines from shops outside the hospital.
कुछ भी मेडिकल लेने जाओ तो वो बोलते हैं बाहर से लो, और हम मतलब गरीब जो लोग हैं वो बहुत दूर दूर से आते हैं, तो हम भी सिल्लोड से आए हुए, अभी फ़िलहाल वापस जाना है तो मेडिसिन ही नहीं है, मेडिसिन बाहर से लेना है तो घाटे में आना क्यों है।
The hospital dean has rejected reports of medical negligence.
यहाँ पे एकदम सीरियस कंडीशन में पेशेंट आने की वजह से उनको ट्रीटमेंट तो पूरी है, डॉक्टर की कमी नहीं है, दवाइयों की भी कुछ कमी नहीं है, सब पूरी केयर लेने के बावजूद भी पेशेंट की बॉडी ने ट्रीटमेंट को रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं किया, इसलिए इनके डेथ हुए वाले हैं। कोई नेग्लिजेंस या किस दवाई की कमी ये रीज़न नहीं इनके डेथ में।
BJP MP Hemant Patil, who visited the hospital, took the dean to task for the unhygienic conditions at the facility.
डीन के टॉयलेट ब्लॉक में गया तो वो टॉयलेट ब्लॉक पूरा, उसमें पानी नहीं है, सामान भरा पड़ा हुआ है, बंद है, कितने महीनों से उसको यूज नहीं किया है, तो ये बहुत ही बड़ा रैकेट यहाँ पे है, तो इसके ऊपर कार्रवाई होना बहुत जरूरी है।
Former Chief Minister and Congress MLA Ashok Chavan put the blame on Eknath Shinde government for the shortage of medicine at the government hospitals.
अभी तक 31 पेशेंट्स की डेथ हुई है। बच्चों की स्ट्रेंथ उसमें डेथ जो है वो तकरीबन 15-16 है, एग्जैक्ट फिगर मेरे पास नहीं जो मुझे बताया गया है। तो कई कारण है, इसलिए गवर्नमेंट मेडिकल कॉलेज, इसलिए इसमें तुरंत कुछ फैसले गवर्नमेंट की ओर से होना जरूरी है।
अशोक चौहान जी ने इसमें राजकारण करना नहीं चाहिए, वो वहाँ के लोक प्रतिनिधि हैं, उनके इलाके में ये हॉस्पिटल आता है, उनकी भी जिम्मेदारी बनती है, जैसा विपक्ष सत्ता की लोगों की जिम्मेदारी बनती है वैसा विपक्ष की भी जिम्मेदारी बनती है।
Opposition parties accusing the Shinde government of spending crores of rupees on publicity but investing no money in medicines for children. Following the uproar, the Shinde government has ordered a probe into the charges of negligence at the Nanded hospital.
संबंधित सेक्रेटरी, संबंधित अधिकारी प्रत्यक्ष घटनास्थळी गेलेले आहेत आणि या बाबतीमध्ये प्राथमिक माहिती घेतली असता हॉस्पिटलमध्ये 127 प्रकारची औषधं त्याचा साठा पूर्ण होता, परंतु सरकारने ही बाब अतिशय गांभीर्याने घेतलेली आहे।
A similar incident was reported in August when 18 people died at the Thane Municipal Corporation run by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Memorial Hospital. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's give you some good news, and the good news today is coming from the world of athletics, where at the Asian Games, India continues to shine. India won a further 9 medals today, including 2 gold, an equal number of silver and 5 bronze to take our tally to 69. The star of the day was Parul Chaudhary, who won the 5,000 meters on the back of getting a silver in the 3,000 meter steeplechase. Today she overtook her Japanese rival in the last stretch to win that 5,000 meter race. So she won gold. The other gold is coming from javelin, because it's not just Neeraj Chopra shining away. Today it was Anu Rani. She clinched the gold in the women's javelin throw with a throw of 62.92 meters. India at 69 medals. We're hoping that they will cross 100, hopefully. Okay, that's it on the news today. Just a reminder, tomorrow the India Today conclave travels to Mumbai. Lots of stellar guests, politicians, film stars, entrepreneurs will join us. Do tune in for that. For now, stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubh Ratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.